Video is an overview of how to complete the water cycle gizmo document. To begin, make sure you type your name up here, and you want to make sure you are writing in any highlighted brackets that say type here. Be sure to log into the gizmo. You can click the title Student Exploration Water Cycle. That will bring you to the gizmo link to the water cycle. And then acknowledge the vocabulary. Consider highlighting words that are more unfamiliar to you, such as aquifer, perhaps reservoir, runoff. Remember that transpiration happens when plants carry out photosynthesis, and a product of photosynthesis is water vapor. Plants release water vapor through their leaves. Be sure to watch this video that describes how the Great Lakes formed, and then, using what you learned from the video, fill in the highlighted sections. Next, we have the gizmo warm-up. It says water on Earth is always in motion. These motions form a repeating circuit called the water cycle. The water cycle gizmo allows you to explore the different paths water takes as it moves from Earth's surface to the atmosphere and back. You'll notice that you need to click through oceans and then answer a question. Then you'll click atmosphere, answer that question. You'll click clouds and describe how clouds form. You'll click precipitation, specifically rain, and answer the question, what causes it to rain? And then number 5 asks you to describe a cycle that is part of the overall water cycle. So going back to the top, it says click oceans. What percentage of Earth's water is found in the oceans? So I'll go to the gizmo, and then I have my water cycle gizmo here. I'll click on oceans. It says the ocean contains 97.25% of Earth's water. So I will type that in. Be sure to put a label on your number. So in this case, you need the percentage sign. And then it says click atmosphere. How does the sun cause water to move from the oceans to the atmosphere? So we click atmosphere. It says when liquid water is heated by the sun, it evaporates into the atmosphere. The atmosphere contains about 2,100 cubic miles, about 0.001% of the total water on the planet. So we want to remember that when liquid water in the oceans is heated by the sun, it will evaporate into the atmosphere. So we'll type that in. The question is specifically about oceans. So we will say when the sun heats the liquid water in the oceans, the liquid water evaporates and becomes water vapor. This water vapor rises high into the atmosphere. The water vapor would rise because it is not very dense. It has very low density. So the water vapor is very light and fluffy. Then we click clouds and answer the question, how do clouds form? So it says when saturated air in the atmosphere cools, water vapor condenses into tiny droplets to form clouds. Besides providing a source of precipitation, clouds play an important role in controlling Earth's surface temperatures. You want to remember that clouds are made up of liquid water droplets. Water is really good at absorbing heat, so the clouds do absorb some of the sun's heat. Also, clouds will deflect some of the sun's radiation back towards the sun and prevent that radiation, that heat, from coming into the Earth's atmosphere. So clouds do help to manage the Earth's surface temperatures. Look at this first sentence. When saturated air in the atmosphere cools, water vapor condenses into tiny droplets to form clouds. You want to put that in your own words, because that is describing how clouds form, and then type that description in your own words of how clouds form. Next, you want to click precipitation, specifically rain, and describe what causes it to rain. So we'll click precipitation, not snow. The gizmo is telling us to click rain. And then we read, when water droplets in clouds grow large enough, they fall as rain. And then we have more details about how much rain falls in Hawaii. Remember, that's a tropical climate zone, and also in Death Valley, which would be in an arid desert climate zone. So answer that question in your own words. And then it says click oceans again, and then choose the path tab. Because it has the same beginning and end, the path is a complete cycle. This path has 5 steps. List them. Note that oceans and oceans will be the first and last steps. Okay, so let's go and we will click ocean. Then we click path. Notice what we have here: oceans, atmosphere, clouds, precipitation, falling as rain, and oceans. This is a cycle that is part of the water cycle. The water cycle is actually made up of many, many, many smaller cycles. And you want to know that water may be in a different water cycle. The water droplet could have evaporated into the atmosphere, formed a cloud, and fallen as rain, but maybe that water could have fallen as rain into a river, and maybe some of that river water could have been used to water crops. So then that river water would be part of the vegetation, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different paths the water can take. This is one path. So it is one cycle that is within the overall water cycle. So remember the sequence here: oceans, atmosphere, clouds, precipitation, and oceans. You might want to record this on a sheet of paper because you need to write this down or type this on your document. So oceans, atmosphere. So water evaporates up from the oceans, goes into the atmosphere as water vapor. The water vapor will condense and form clouds. And when the clouds grow heavy enough with water droplets, that water will fall as rain. And then that rain might fall back onto an ocean. So this is one example of a cycle within the overall larger water cycle. And we go to the activity. It says get the gizmo ready, select the simulation tab, and click reset. So we'll go to full screen, simulation, reset. And then it says, question, what are the parts of the water cycle? Collect data. Create 2 water cycles using the gizmo. Each cycle should have at least 4 steps and should begin and end at the same location. Choose any starting point from the list on the right. When the cycle is complete, choose the Path tab and write the steps below. So what we're being asked to do is to look at all the different stages of the water cycle, the places water can be on the right-hand side. We pick a place, maybe rivers, and then we want to describe water traveling from rivers to another place and to another place and to another place. But ultimately, for this cycle, the water has to come back to rivers. So you are creating your own water cycle. Try to imagine water, maybe one water droplet flowing through the cycle you are creating. So let's say that the water is starting off in the soil. So water in the soil can help crops grow. So let's say that there is a garden growing. Maybe it's a vegetable garden. And let's say the garden is growing tomatoes. So a person eats a tomato from that garden. Tomatoes have a lot of water in them. So the person eats that tomato, takes in the water. Certainly, the person will digest the tomato. The water can be given off and then become wastewater. Also, a person will sweat, and that sweat can evaporate from the person's body and help form a cloud. So let's click atmosphere. Now remember, we have to ultimately get back to soil. So we'll click atmosphere, and then we'll click clouds. And then let's say that it's very cold. And so instead of falling as rain, the precipitation that falls from the clouds actually falls as snow. So then the snow could actually fall back onto the soil. And now the snow can melt into the soil, and we're back where we started. So let's look at our path. We do have at least 4 steps. We have soil, vegetation, person, atmosphere, clouds, precipitation, snow. So we could write these down, and we want to remember them because we need to type them in. So we could type soil, vegetation, person, atmosphere, clouds, precipitation, falling as snow. And then let's say that that snow happens to fall back onto the soil. The snow could fall onto another place, maybe a river, and then the river water will actually eventually it could flow into an ocean. Maybe that water can get evaporated. But no matter what happens for this cycle, you want that starting water to go back to being soil, or go back to being in the soil. So that is one cycle. Now you want to create another cycle that has at least 4 steps, and make sure you have the same beginning and ending steps. So you would go back, click full screen, simulation, click reset, and then you pick a place, any place where you want the water to start. And wherever the water starts, it has to return to that starting place, and your cycle has to have at least 4 steps. So remember that all of these mini cycles are actually forming the overall water cycle. Now, as you work through the rest of the document, it says analyze, use the information presented in the gizmo to answer the following questions. So, for example, question A, what percentage of Earth's water can be found in soil? So there's a good chance if you click on soil, you'll get the answer. Here it is. Moisture in the soil makes up about 0.005% of Earth's water. So you would type in that answer. So for number 2, a lot of your answers for number 2 are just coming directly from clicking on the label on the right-hand side. You might have to continually click reset, but that is how you'll get your answers, by clicking on the stage of the water cycle on the right-hand side. And then for number 3, you start thinking about phase change. It says a phase change is a change from one state to another, such as from a liquid to a gas. Based on what you have read in the gizmo, fill in the blanks with the words liquid, gas, or solid to define each change. So evaporation, your word bank would be liquid, gas, or solid. Evaporation is when water changes from a liquid into a gas. So you want to type out the different phases or states that are part of the change. So do the same for condensation, melting, or freezing. Now for number 4, it says practice. Fill in the process that causes each transition. Your choices are evaporation, condensation, precipitation, melting, and freezing. So let's think about this, and we can return back to the gizmo for a visual. It says ocean to atmosphere. So in order for water to leave the ocean and to get into the atmosphere, the water has to evaporate. So evaporation is in our word bank. You will probably reuse the words from these choices. So, for example, a glacier, river of ice, okay, into a river. So a glacier in order to get into a river, a glacier would probably need to melt. So melting is the process. Just think about the process that helps the water move from the starting place to the next place. Now for number 5, it says practice. Fill in the 2 processes that cause each of the following transitions. So answers can vary here, but really think through the most probable answer. So for an ocean, water in the ocean to become part of a cloud, really think about what's happening. There is more than one step. The ocean water will undergo evaporation, and now you have water vapor traveling up high into the atmosphere. You have water vapor, though, that's water gas. That water gas needs to condense, so you are going to have condensation. And it's that condensation that forms a cloud. A cloud is actually made up of liquid water droplets. Condensation is when water vapor loses energy and becomes liquid water. And so then you have a hint on B. And now for number 6, it says, think about this. Water covers over 2/3 of the Earth's surface, yet water shortages are a major problem for people around the world. This means that for around the world, people do not have all of the drinking water they need and all of the water they need to wash their clothes and to water their crops. So all throughout the world, there are people who are experiencing water shortages, yet we have so much water. Water covers over 2/3 of the Earth's surface. Why do you think this is the case? Respond in full sentences in the box below. For hints, think about the answers to the questions below. How much of the Earth's water is in the form of salt water? About what percentage of the Earth's water is frozen in the forms of glaciers and ice caps? Is it easy to desalinate water? What about the way agriculture and industry use water? You can scroll back up to the gizmo and look particularly at your answers to number 2, analyze, to get some data to help you answer those questions. And then consider having a with a classmate to discuss answers, possible answers to this question, and then type the answer in your own words.